Issue 155. We see Patch casually sucking up to the king, saying he brought him his evening nightcap, and asking if things went over well with another king we don't know about, making it look like he cares when he doesn't. So there was another king? I thought the only other king was the Iron King. The king explains he's having a hard time convincing anyone over here to join the fight against Eggman because they're all cowards. And Patch says that's not surprising because Eggman's had little interest in this section of Mobius. And I guess his conclusion is based on if they did fight Eggman, then he would have an interest in them. He then thinks happily about how the king's drinking the poison all down, and immediately gets tired and needs to rest because it's a very fast-acting one. After Patch thinks to himself that one day he'll rule over the Kingdom of Acorns because he doesn't understand how royal succession works, Tails expresses disappointment at seeing Fiona, acting all panicked, and his line of "not again" is apparently referencing a similar awkward moment in issue 150, even though he didn't know it was awkward, he didn't know it was coming. For some reason, Tails immediately talks as if Sonic was dating Fiona, when we got no indication that Sonic told him that he just got a girlfriend. When that happened? I would have liked to see her bring that idea up. Instead, it comes out of nowhere. After he asks all betrayed, and Fiona, calling him Junior, naturally gets all offended at how he was acting as if she was the worst person ever to date by anyone. She snarks, "What's that supposed to mean? I have bad breath or something?" She then tells Tails that he's been acting strange ever since she met him, and she'd only just now like to put the effort into finding out why. Tails recaps his history with the robot double, as I wonder how the hell Fiona didn't already know about this a long time ago. Did everyone just agree to keep it a secret from her behind her back? Fiona naturally points out that the robot duplicate was more Tails' age because it was made when she was Tails' age, while Fiona is a teenager. And at the very least, she's nice enough to not be completely blunt about it and just say to him outright, "I can't date you, I'm a teenager, you're a child, it's creepy and illegal." For the same reason Sonic never told Amy that, I suppose. At the very least, Tails says that he's hoping someday she could be with him, rather than adamantly insisting on it right now. Fiona tells Tails sincerely that she thinks he's sweet and really likes him, but not in a romantic way, and explains that she obviously would prefer to date guys her own age, like Sonic. I thought that when I'd read all the issues leading up to this point, that this moment would make more sense, but instead she just starts dating him in this same issue out of complete nowhere. I mean, I know the actual reason behind it, but that wasn't foreshadowed well at all because of what we got arbitrarily cheated out of seeing. Right now, we have no way of knowing why she chose to date Sonic. After Tails goes from heartbroken to enraged, lashing out at Sonic, feeling betrayed that he dates someone that he wouldn't have a chance with at this point in time, being unfair to him, he runs away crying, and Fiona is the level-headed one, telling Sonic to just let him go because there's nothing he could do or say that would make him feel any better. Meanwhile, Patch in the airship tells the Queen that he's already left word for the Doctor on standby for the King. For some reason, Dr. Quack feels the need to remind him in annoyance how many times he saved the King's life. He then tells Patch to make sure the King takes one of the pills with each meal, causing Patch to think, does life get any easier than this? A few hours later, Sally asks Patch in annoyance if this is really necessary, whatever that is, because this is Knothole, not an unfriendly territory, and Patch explains that Eggman is dangerous and he's pledged his life in the defense of the royal family. If the point was to make him speak French with having the adjective after the noun, then why not make the word family be famille too? You were almost there! Either way, he tells Sally that her parents await, with me still not knowing what they were talking about for sure, and after Sally shows her affection for her father, he tells her that because of his health, he'll have to step down, and make Sally become the Queen. However, because of bullshit tradition, being the Queen requires Sally to marry someone. That someone is forced to be Patch because she pushed away Sonic after all, and Patch sucked up to the King. Sally cathartically complains, "What is this, the Dark Ages? Don't I have any say in the matter?" The Queen reassures her that while her arranged marriage with the King wasn't love at first sight, it's been love ever since. The King asks Sally if he needs to remind her what happens when she lets her heart be her judge, and says he's glad it all ended before she would end up marrying Sonic, who he uncharacteristically calls a commoner. Poisoned or not, that was rude of him. Sally runs away, feeling betrayed, as Patch smirks at the outcome. And then while Sonic's playing the guitar, he thinks about how his mother's taste in music is outdated. Then Bunny shows up looking so sad that I actually felt sorry for her, and tells Sonic while crying and panicking that Sally's gonna have to marry Patch this weekend.
Also, Sonic says babe, like Scourge would. He's like, what brings you to my crib, babe? I like that, because again, he talks like Scourge would, because they're like the same person. Makes more sense that way.
Sonic rushes at super speed to the castle, considering Sally marrying Patch without telling him to be the breaking point that's just not right after everything else that happened. When Patch tells him to stop and asks like Jeffrey if he has an appointment to meet with anyone inside, Sonic angrily tells him, "Oh, stuff it, Juan! Since when do I need one?" Patch threatens him that if he takes one more step, it'll be his last, and somehow manages to luck out winning the fight as his sword snags the top of Sonic's glove and he kicks him off a wooden banister into a pool that fortunately for Sonic was very shallow and like right next to him. Patch tells him that he could have gutted him as a threat to the throne, but decided not to finish him off because I guess he doesn't want to win. He leaves, saying that next time he won't be so generous, and knocks on the door asking Moan Princess if he can come in. This mistake happens more than once, and I'm surprised it even does. First off, Princess is obviously going to be a feminine word, so Moan wouldn't be right, it'd be Ma. And Ichwan said Ma Chérie, so it's not like he's intentionally saying the male possessive adjective to make English speakers understand. And second, if you're going to put it in French, then the princess would have an E at the end. Either way, he confronts Sally, who complains that she didn't give him permission to come in, and Sally asks resentfully, "Why are you doing this? To get back at Sonic?" Which would make sense since Sonic bullied him as a kid, and then asks if she's just misguided and thinks they'd actually live happily ever after. While Antoine and Bunny are way happier together, Sally and Antoine definitely would have been more compatible than she was with Sonic, because at least their personalities would be similar. They're both cautious realists. Patch then calls her Mon Chérie. Great, so he says Mon instead of Ma when they did it right earlier in the comic. Patch lies to manipulate her that he doesn't want to marry her any more than she wants to marry him. Well, that is technically true in the long term, he doesn't want to stay with her. Patch manipulates her, badly, with simply saying the buzzwords duty, honor, and obligation to one's king, and says that he thought she, of all people, would understand that. Somehow, Sally does get manipulated by this, saying that she had just been hoping for the fairy tale, as in true love. So she's giving up already? The stubborn, determined Sally? If only that lasted. Dr. Quack checks the king's pulse the next morning and angrily asks Patch if he's been taking his medicine. Patch lies, and with Sally showing up in a panic, Dr. Quack explains that the king's in a coma.
Where does he get his poison and the pills he probably masqueraded as the ones the king needed anyways?
This causes Sally to agree to the wedding out of compassion to try to humor her father, purely because she thinks it's the right thing to do, being self-sacrificial. It's one of the defining moments of her character, honestly, that being self-sacrificial means good, and one of the few defining moments that are positive. After Sonic runs out of the house, saying he'll tell his parents what he's doing later, causing Jules to reassure Bernadette that they can't be too overprotective of their super-powered son. No duh. Sonic wonders if he can play it smart and see if the one person who could help is willing to. Sally in the wedding veil reassures herself from her thoughts that she's following her destiny, as if that's a good thing to her when she's always had an independent streak, especially regarding the source of all and this destiny thing. She thinks, it's not like I'd be marrying an ogre. Antoine has a lot of positive aspects a girl could love. Yeah, Antoine. But in all the time we've seen Patch, the comic's been too lazy in the writing department to show us any for him. Not even him ruffling Tails' hair. He is a brave, proactive freedom fighter at least, so really it's a shame that he was stupid enough to throw it all away like this. If only he died before the whole poisoning started. He would have been remembered a lot better, and maybe made up for a lot. Or not, since he wasn't really being sincere. The story ends with Sally agreeing to marry Patch to the minister after thinking that Sonic had his chance. In the second story, Sally gives Dulcie a surprise pep rally to celebrate her help. I guess this story takes place before the main story. And Dulcie flies away crying for some reason, unable to ignite the bonfire. Sonic then points out that they haven't seen Dulcie breathe fire in a very long time, and she thinks about how she could expect her friends to understand what she went through and the shame of being an outcast dragon. It's explained that in her childhood, Her colony lived in the sky for generations until they lost their fear of the surface creatures, which Dulcie regards as a foolish mistake that came out of nowhere since SWAT bots ambushed all of them. Except her, since she was out picking berries that day. Then Dulcie realized that a small colony of dragons had escaped roboticization, which makes sense, and she had joined them, led by an elder who said the time had come to part ways with the surface world. He vowed to lead them to the great ancient draconian city of Vesuvio, a gigantic cave under the planet's largest volcano where the dragon's ancestors lived. Wasn't the largest volcano the same one that Tails had been threatened with? The ancient walkers had forged the magic golden rings there on the banks of Lava Lake. So Nate wasn't the only one who could do that, go figure. Unfortunately for Dulcie, her leaving the Dragon City to enjoy flying in the sky caused her to be permanently banished from it. Since I guess they had to have some kind of deterrent from leaving and risking roboticization. But that was for the best since it led to her saving Sally and Sonic from swap bots with fire breath and becoming a freedom fighter. And she found the whole thing thrilling and rewarding. However, when she was discovered, she received the ultimate punishment for a dragon because banishment clearly wasn't enough. Her black singe ring from her nose was replaced with a gold magic ring which inhibited her ability to breathe fire instead of enhancing it like rings always do for some reason. For years, the freedom fighter somehow never noticed or commented on her not using her fire breath. This is like if someone went months without talking and none of his friends noticed. Because his friends all assumed that he talked in front of other people when they weren't there. Dulcie sometimes felt so bad about the curse that she painted her gold ring black to look like the old ring, but for some reason the paint would fade and she'd always feel foolish afterwards. It makes sense that she'd do that. Out of complete nowhere, she decides that because she's done living a lie, she's going to go ask for a pardon from the Dragon City and be useless to the freedom fighters there, rather than simply telling her friends what happened to her like she should have. The story ends with Dulcie being attacked by mega dragons, who after all that time of monitoring her, have been led to the Dragon City by her at last. So she made a really stupid mistake here. The first story, by Ken Penders, is about Patch carrying out his stupid plan to get himself a hold of the throne by poisoning the king and getting himself married to Sally. Well, the plan would mainly be stupid if he plans to kill her, because the thing about royal succession is, it only goes to someone with royal blood. He'd only stay in power as long as he kept Sally alive. Elias and his family exist, so the throne will go to them without her. I guess his idea is that if he wipes out the entirety of the royal family, they'll have no choice but to settle for him. Okay, that does make perfect sense, it's a pretty small family, but why does he care? I guess I just don't understand the power-hungry mindset. Wouldn't he be bored by all the paperwork and meetings and stuff involved with running a country? And I remember him insisting on going on missions with the freedom fighters that involved him fighting robots. Does he really think he can juggle that, which he must enjoy or he wouldn't have insisted on overstaying in the plane, with the responsibilities of being a king of a country he doesn't care about? He clearly hasn't thought this through. It is clever though, but what a shame, he was so close. If only he had never made a plan like this, he could have stayed as a hero for the rest of his life. Also, this is the issue where Fiona starts dating Sonic, and the problem I have with that is that we don't actually see the moment she decides to start doing that. It just comes out of nowhere, and Tails immediately knows what's happening and gets all upset about it. I actually don't mind the concept of Tails getting all mad at Sonic for this, because you know what? Tails always blindly liking Sonic and them never getting into any arguments at all is bland, boring, unrealistic, and got stale. Because yes, while he is a good friend, real friendships don't go that long with no big fights or arguments, and sibling relationships certainly don't. Having Tails get into a disagreement with Sonic and finally showing that he can in fact have a problem with the friendship is more realistic and believable. Didn't people say that they loved their interaction in Colors because Tails was always ragging on Sonic? I can understand why it'd be seen as jarring though, since they've literally never had a major bump in the road before. But just because it's never been done before doesn't make it a terrible idea. Color me intrigued. It helps that I completely understand Tails' reaction here, so it's not like in Lost World where he's just a crybaby's dick having massive overreaction. It makes more sense here that he'd feel cheated and heartbroken and betrayed. And the second story was by Mike Gallagher, and involved introducing the concept that Dulcie in fact isn't ridiculously lucky and convenient enough to be the only dragon left who's not roboticized. And not only does it make more sense with that, but it also explains how there's more dragons left. There's a colony, So I guess her abusive boyfriend Zan left that colony. And it's explained why Dulcie hasn't used fire breath in a very long time. Something I'm astonished and impressed that they cared enough to explain it all. I didn't even notice it. But here they are wrapping up a loose plot thread that I didn't even know about. And at the end, Dulcie makes a somewhat understandable mistake in trying to get herself forgiven by the Dragon City idealistically, instead of just telling her friends about her curse. And it turns out Eggman was tracking her in case she would lead him to the colony of survivors. Wait a minute, how did he even know there was a colony so he could make his dragon robots try to search for it? That's a big plot hole. Either way, I liked the concepts of the story. It was just hard to stay engaged with all the narration with no dialogue.